Alphonse Joseph Alphie Mccourt is one of the talented Mccourt brothers. Alphie has written prominently and profusely for both American and Irish periodicals and magazines, and has recorded several works for audio presentation. He is perhaps best known for his memoir, A Long Stone's Throw, which has been praised and described as a story filled with tenderness and redemption, beautifully written, with gentle wit, penetrating honesty, and forgiving insight. All sounds very flowery. Last night, he said to cut all the flowery introduction out and tell him that he was well known to the police. He's a little bit of a character, and we are going to enjoy him this evening. Mr. Mccourt had been introduced to the Friendly Sons by one of our own, Ray Lenedy. Ray recounts how he and Alphie met in Manhattan at, of all places, a bar. When he was introduced to Alphie by a mutual friend, Ray exclaimed how he had read Alphie's book and enjoyed it immensely. Well, understandably, that turned into an instant friendship, which turned into a long evening, to the point Ray found himself without a means to return to his hotel. Alphie immediately came to the rescue and drove Ray back to his accommodations. They have since become great friends. Gentlemen, please welcome Alphie Mccourt.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Joe, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Ray Lenedy, for introducing me to the Friendly Sons, and for Chris Kelly for inviting me here, to all the Kelly family who have made me very, very welcome here. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm sitting on a dais here with a very distinguished group, so I won't attempt to name everyone or to thank everyone. I'd be likely to omit someone, and I might not get out of here alive, you never know. So as Joe explained, I met Ray in New York, and he introduced me to Chris, and here I am tonight. And my brother Frank wrote a famous book, Angela's Ashes, and won the Pulitzer Prize. And he was invited here, I understand, a number of years ago. But he went to the White House instead, so you were snubbed for the White House. And Brother Malachi is well known, character, personality, actor. He's been on in a million movies, on the radio, on Broadway and everything else, and he could not make it down here tonight, so I'm here. My brother Mike lived in San Francisco, and he was a great friend of the mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown, and Mike was kind of an unofficial mayor of San Francisco, but then he died last year, so he's not here. He's not here. So here I is. And now I think I'm going to cry. Well, Ray Lenedy told me that I should be very serious tonight. No, he said I had been advised not to be serious. I once was asked to introduce a gathering, a breakfast gathering in Manhattan. I was asked to introduce the author of a book on schizophrenia. Apparently, we Irish have a big strain of schizophrenia. I attributed it to our centuries of having to deal with England and to deal with Rome, and I probably offend some people by saying that, but it's the truth. I think we were torn between England and Rome. We never could make up our minds in which direction we should go. Like the Irishman used to join the British Army and take the English shilling, as they say, send it home to his mother or his wife, and then she would send it off to Rome. So the whole I never understood it. But anyway, I was introducing this man who wrote a book on schizophrenia. We do seriously have a strong strain of schizophrenia. and we also suffer from the celiac disease, the wheat intolerance. My brother Frank once suggested to me that I should do some research into the connection between schizophrenia and celiac disease, but I didn't have time, so I had to let it go, maybe in my next life. But I had to introduce this man. He had a tragedy in his family. So many of his family suffered from schizophrenia, and it was a breakfast thing, and people were very serious. There were other people involved in the field of mental illness. And I really didn't know what to say. You know, I got up anyway, and I began by saying, there is no humor in mental illness. And I stopped, and everybody laughed. So, you never know. I guess the room was full of schizophrenics. I was the chief. Anyway, Ray Linda did tell me that if any lost or errant Republicans ever wander in here, they're kept in a separate room. But he said on special occasions they're trotted out and allowed to sit in the main in the main assembly hall, in order to head off any kind of litigation, whether it be civil rights or otherwise. So there are probably some Republicans in here tonight. So you should probably look to your right and look to your left, and there will be a prize for the person who identifies the most lost Republicans. And then Chris, on another note, was telling me that they sometimes have a Protestant wander in here, even worse, maybe a Presbyterian. But they're shunted off into another room and only allowed in once in a while. I have to tell you that in our family a few years ago we discovered, I don't know if I should tell you this, we did discover that we have a Presbyterian in our lineage. I think our great-grandmother was a Presbyterian. So now I've told it, we're outed. But I've been thinking for some years that St. Patrick came to Ireland and he brought Christianity to Ireland. He didn't bring Catholicism, and obviously he didn't bring Protestantism because it didn't exist at the time. But he did bring Christianity, and I've always felt it a shame that we have St. Patrick's Day, we have the 12th of July, and that on no occasion can we ever march under the banner of St. Patrick. I realise also that there's an impediment to that, that the Presbyterians are unlikely to march up Fifth Avenue and kiss the ring of the Cardinal. We'll have to find a way around that. But George Mitchell was quoted in the paper yesterday as saying that the situation in Northern Ireland is okay, that they're making progress, but it's very slow progress, and that to get the two sides together and to trust each other. So thinking since President Clinton really initiated the whole thing by getting George Mitchell to go over there and allowing the leader of the IRA to come over here, that President Clinton, so I was wondering if it's possible for what the politicians like to call, they love the word, it's a precious word, a new initiative. They're always coming up with new initiatives. So maybe there could be an initiative from this side of the ocean to reconcile the two sides over there. The thing is, I'm leaving town tomorrow, so I won't be held responsible for any of it. But anyway, there's the old Northern Ireland joke on the same note. The old Northern Ireland joke says, are you a Catholic or are you a Protestant? I am a Buddhist. Well then, are you a Catholic Buddhist or a Protestant Buddhist? But then again, up in Woodstock, New York, there's a quote from Napoleon that I like, that I saw up in Woodstock, New York. it says that religion is what keeps the poor from murdering the rich. I think there's always some truth in that. Again, I'm leaving tomorrow, so. But then again, also in Woodstock, New York, outside a restaurant, there was a sign that said, tofu-free mozzarella, and that really struck me. I had no idea that there was tofu in mozzarella. I think it's probably a national disgrace. But tofu used to be the cure-all for everything. Eat tofu, substitute for meat, substitute for chicken, and probably contains a cure for athlete's foot. But nowadays, tofu is out. So we have tofu-free mozzarella. But then again, I thought, well, if you can have tofu in mozzarella, and the Italians will put up with it, maybe we can get the Protestants and the Catholics together. But anyway, that afternoon I was going around chanting, who knew, mozzarella with tofu. Who knew, mozzarella with tofu, until my wife would say, will you please shut up? But also on the same, I keep harping on this Presbyterian business, but in 1798, the Catholics and the Presbyterians did get together and rise up, Catholics and Presbyterians and dissidents. The rebellion, of course, was a failure, they always are. But it ended up bitterly for both sides. And you know, the definition of Irish Alzheimer's is we forget everything but the grudge, right? But I think of Northern Ireland as kind of a template for world peace, because if we can fix this, if we can really fix it in depth, we could maybe do something everywhere. I think most religions have love at their core, but somehow or other there comes a kind of religious ideology and we forget about the love. But I'm coming to the end now. Thank God to see. There are two themes tonight. One is St. Patrick, and which we have dutifully acknowledged. And the other is the centennial, the 100th anniversary of the Rising of 1916. There are about 8 million books being written about it, tons of movies and documentaries and poets and everything else. But I thought I might finish with a song, Skibbereen, which is a song of the Great Hunger, which was kind of a, because at the end of the Great Hunger, so many Irishmen came to New York, and the Rising of 1916 was planned and funded essentially from New York, from the United States. The Skibbereen. Oh, Father dear, I oft times hear you speak of Erin's Isle. Her lofty peaks, her valleys green, her mountains rude and wide. You say it is a lovely land, wherein a prince might dwell. Then why did you abandon it? The reason to me tell. Oh, son, I loved my native land with energy and pride, till a blight came over all the land, my sheep and cattle died. My rent and taxes were too great, I could not them redeem, and that's the cruel reason why I left old Skibbereen. And you were only 2 years old, and feeble was your frame. I could not leave you with my friends, you bore your father's name. So I wrapped you in my coat o' moor, in the dead of night unseen. I heaved a sigh and bade goodbye to dear old Skibbereen. Oh, Father dear, the day will come when vengeance will be mine, when Irishmen with feeling stern will rally one and all. I'll be the man to lead the van beneath the flag of green, and loud and high we'll raise the cry, revenge for Skibbereen. Thank you all. You've been
Good.